And today I want to be informal. You need to get up, move around or something. Um, I know we look very formally dressed, but we're not formal at heart. For those of you who know us, we want you to feel comfortable. If you've got questions while we're talking, go ahead and interrupt and everything. We'll be breaking out after our break so that we can work with you individually as clerks and recorders, and this is more the general session part and everything. But irregardless, this is all about you and getting to know you and you getting to know us. So, to be real super formal and everything is kind of like, well, how do I get to know you? So please, by all means. And to kind of start out so I can have a feel for it, yesterday I wasn't able to be here. I was at the sheriff's newly elected, the people with guns. And but they're surprisingly very friendly when you're telling them about, how to run things. They're like all ears and everything. But I was very aware. I did see some guns and stuff, so I was aware. Anyway, so I really didn't get the chance to meet with any of you yesterday, and I'm just kind of curious, how many of you are just new to government, period? Just raise your hands. Okay, we've got a few, okay. How many of you are new to county government? Okay, a couple more here. How many of you have never been in the office that you're currently now newly elected? Okay. So a lot of you are kind of switching. How many of you are just kind of coming up through the ranks, knew what you're getting yourself into, and you still went ahead and did it anyway? Oh, good for you. You see those people that just raise their hands? You need to be talking to them. One thing we're always kind of asked, why do we do this in December? It's kind of a toss-up for newly elected, whether we do it in December or do it in January. We've kind of settled that it's important to let you know some of the key factors that you need to know as soon as you hit the door. Because we know that sometimes, and that's unfortunate, but sometimes you might not have, let's say, somebody who's going to be there to guide you to get in the door. So we're like, these are the absolute first steps and things that we feel like, look, you need to be aware of this as soon as you do hit that door, and here's some people you can contact when things aren't working out right for you. And that's why we just want to have those basic building blocks for you, because there is a lot to learn in both of your offices. From the recorder's side, I will have to say, from a financial, which is what we're all about, is the financial side. You do have some complicated fees and everything, which we'll be talking about later this morning when we're alone. But your big thing is recording those documents, and what kind of documents, and that I'm not an expert in. And so this afternoon, you will be talking with your association, who that's what they're all about. And they'll be kind of going over those things that you need to know and what you need to be doing. Clerks have a little bit more on the financial side, because you have obviously all the fees that you take in for the courts and everything. You also have the child support side of things, so we'll be talking about those as well. And then the clerks have quite a few hats because of the elections that you have to run. We'll have somebody come in and speak briefly about that. You need to kind of have an understanding of case types, so somebody will be speaking to that. And like I mentioned, the child support, the director of child support will be coming in and talking to you because that is obviously one of your big sides that you have to deal with. So we're trying to, again, nobody's going to get in depth in anything, but we will be talking in a broad aspect so that you kind of get the hang of it. Again, any questions? There's no such thing as a stupid question. I will be more likely to ask those stupid questions after you get to know me, because I'll call you and all your offices are a little different. You are the managers of these offices. The systems you implement are going to be, there's a lot of similarities, but there's differences too. And so a lot of times when you call to ask a question, I have to get a little bit more in depth and ask you, well, how are you running things? What system are you using? The one thing, and I'm sure your associations will be talking about this a little bit, is that you want to kind of get to know those people who have similar or the same system as you have, because they can be a great help to you. So. Don't be afraid to use all the tools that I'm going to talk about, because some of them are a little bit intimidating and some of them are maybe not user-friendly. But once you get used to using them, and one thing I'm thinking about, which we will go over, is the Indiana Code, because the Indiana Code is so important for you to know how to get to, look at. You're not going to be a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer either, but you do need to be able to access that information, because the basis for everything that you do is based on some kind of authority, whether that's the Indiana Code, or if the Indiana Code allows for some home rule or policies or our guidelines. And I'll get into talking about that a little bit more here in a minute. So again, can't reiterate enough, don't hesitate to contact us. We'd much, much rather talk with you up front about concerns and issues that you're having, instead of, well, let me see if I can fix it. I encourage you to try to fix things on your own, but you know, we all can use that helping hand, and things can get out of control rather quickly. And so whether it's us, your association, a fellow recorder or clerk, you need to try to get that help as soon as possible. You know, don't try to be superhero here, because we're all in this together and we want to each of you to succeed. You should have a PowerPoint presentation and something that we call for audit process. So those should be your two handouts you have. The one thing that I want to make sure that you do is that you sign in. I don't know if you signed in this morning. Okay, well, just sign in at some point this morning at the table or around lunchtime. The sign-in sheet will be there. That's really important. The AIC, who we've been working in conjunction with, and they have been great. Christine, I'm sure you met her yesterday, and she set up this stuff, and it's a lot of work, and I think she's done a fantastic job. But anyway, you are entitled to be reimbursed for today, and that's the way that we get the information that you attended today, so that we can send out a certification to you. And it's really important that we have your address so that we can send out that certification letter. Normally, when you're in office and you come to a conference, you don't get the certification. You'll need to keep your receipts and everything, which I'll tell you a little bit about here in a second. But for those purposes, we send it directly to the auditor. The auditor, though, in this case, isn't going to know you, or, you know, maybe some of you. But we need to be able to get that information to you so that you can provide that to the auditor. We also need for you to keep the receipts that you have, for your lodging, your meals, because that's what the auditor will need, and you'll need to contact the auditor for a claim form. So more than likely, you won't get reimbursed until come January. Kind of have that as an expectation, because this is mid-December, and they do have to have certain meetings to get those payments. But again, make sure that you sign, make sure you keep those receipts and everything. If you are questioned about whether or not that you're entitled to this reimbursement, under Indiana Code IC 5-11-14-1, that is the statute that enables you to get this reimbursement. The call letter that you received should have, and that's what we call them, the letter that you received that said come to the meeting, that should have that information on there. But if a auditor, or sometimes their commissioners or whoever, they're going to say what's entitled you, that is what entitles you to it. And one of the reasons that they're very concerned about this is because, and you'll hear this terminology, it comes out of unappropriated funds. Yes? It is county by county basis. Most counties recognize that if you're shifting offices, that it's very important for you to be here. And they also understand that this code would apply so that you are called to this meeting as a newly elected official. So, okay. So anyway, unappropriated, for those truly new to government, you'll know if you're a recorder, you get a lot of pleasure out of unappropriated, because you'll have a fund, which we'll talk about in your meeting, that is unappropriated. But that appropriation just means permission to spend, and it's the county council that provides that permission to spend. And for most training, you need a permission to spend. But in this particular case, it comes out of general fund, and it's unappropriated, meaning that you don't need that permission to spend. So just a little mini lesson in budgeting there and terminology. I always love it when technology works for me. Okay, so who is the State Board of Accounts? We were created in 1909 because of corruption in government. People had really lost confidence in their public officials. Fraud was wide-ranging, from state offices down to the local offices. And the legislators saw a need to create an entity that would look into the financial activity of government and make public what was found. So again, we concentrate on the financial side and those compliance issues that impact the financial side. That's not by any means everything of what you are. There are other kinds of compliance issues and duties that you have, but that's our perspective. We're here to provide confidence to the taxpayer in the integrity and the financial accountability of state and local governments. But this is a partnership. You know, if everybody runs rogue, it wouldn't matter if you had 1 million auditors out there. It just couldn't work. And we know that that's not what you want to do, because you took on this challenge because you want to be those responsible public officials. And that's why, from an audit perspective, we're not there to get you. That's not what we're about at all. As a matter of fact, most field examiners hate writing ARCs. I can tell you right now, it is not, they weren't writers in college and they don't like it. But they'll do it if they have to. But this is why the concentration on training and getting advice and resources up front is so important. We audit all governmental units, including counties, cities and towns, schools, townships, state agencies, county hospitals, licensed branches, special districts, and not-for-profits who receive public funds. They're subject to our authority also. Our audits are done by our field staff. There is about 164 that are out there to do this. That's about 1.5 per county to do all of the audits in your county. So you can see we're stretched pretty thin. You might have heard about it in the news, talking about what we can and we can't do anymore. And I believe that there's going to be additional resources for us to be able to do our jobs better and be available more, because again, like I said, that's what we want. It isn't necessarily from the got you as the being a partner with you to get things done and to have that proper accountability to the public. We do a little over 3,000 audits a year, and we issue those corresponding reports, and we'll explain a little bit more about that in a little bit. We're also required to prescribe the uniform accounting records for all governmental units and to issue audit standards everybody must follow. And there should be no surprises when we come in to audit you. These can be found in our manuals and our bulletins. The manual is not all inclusive, but it's pretty thorough. I will have to say that actually for the recorders and the clerks manual will be coming out here a little bit, so it'll be a little bit more updated than what you'll see online currently. The recorders is as of 2012. The poor auditors and treasurers, theirs is in the early 2000s. So we always have to kind of give them a warning when it comes to the Indiana Code that side of things they need to be cautious about. But when it comes to the processes and the information, that's still good. And that applies to you as well. Whenever you see that date, that tells you as of when it was updated, and that's where the Indiana codes start impacting. So you do need to always be cautious about that and look at the date for those code information. But it's still, when it comes to a process, that's one place that you should look. And I think I'll talk about a little bit more about those, but in each of the manuals, they have uniform chapters at the very end, which give you just general information about what we look for. So if I was going to look in a manual, hopefully I've got that written down. That's the chapter that I would look at is the, wow, I can't remember. Hopefully I've got that written down. If not, I would just kind of look at those general chapters in the very end. Don't read through the whole thing at one time. I don't want to put yourselves to sleep. The bulletins are issued quarterly in January, April, July, and October. Those again are very, very informative and give you the guidelines that we expect to see on that. One thing that you'll want to do is to download that information. We'll give you an email, and that's one thing that's very, very important, is that you provide us with your email addresses. Keep them up to date because they do change, but that's how we'll communicate with you. And so we'll send out a notice that there's a new bulletin out there. If you download, then you'll be able to use the search feature that'll enable you to search all of the county bulletins all at one time, which becomes very important. Say you want to know about a perpetuation fund, the clerk's perpetuation fund or the recorder's perpetuation fund. You just type in perpetuation and it'll pull up everything that we've said about perpetuation funds for the past 10 years. Also, the Q&A. There's a question and answer section. And this is when we go to and have our training at conferences, we get a lot of questions. And those are always good questions because that gets into the detail that people are, in general, just saying we don't know what State Board of Accounts expectations are here. And so under the question and answer, that's not indexed. So again, if I have something to say about perpetuation funds that's in addition to any articles that we published and it answers to a specific question, it'll be there. And so that search feature is really important. If you do it online, the search feature is per article, or not article, but bulletin. And so it's not as convenient by a long shot to do research with. Organization. I am going to go over this a little bit, even though I know for most of you, you know who we are, but we have changed a lot this past year. I mean, incredibly, structurally, we have really, really changed. We still have a bipartisan 3-member board. That part hasn't changed. The state examiner, Paul Joyce, who I think that spoke to you briefly yesterday, Tammy White, and also Mike Bazinski is our other deputy state examiner. Each one of them must have a CPA, and the state examiner must have at least 5 years of accounting experience, including 3 years of federal audit experience, which, believe it or not, is very, very important because that's one of the things that we do is a lot of federal audits. You can't have more than 2 board members or members of the same political party, but I'll tell you something, from our agency's perspective, we don't, most of us don't even know what party each one of us is, let alone what party you are. As far as I'm concerned, once that election is over, it's over. Now you're serving the public, and that's how we view it, is that we are here to serve the public and to serve you and to audit you, and we don't care what political party that you are. So, and I can guarantee you nobody in this room even knows what political party I am, because I don't know half the time. No, just kidding. The board is appointed by the governor. The governor, and this is different for this past board, this new board, must submit the recommendation of appointment to a legislative council, which may accept or reject the recommendation. And this is for independence purposes. We are all very happy to see that on State Board of Accounts. We like that we can point towards this procedure as supporting our independence. We've always been independent in mind and in substance, but this allows us to render opinions, which we have been able to do in the past, but there's standards that have changed a little bit from the federal side, and so this enables us to continue to show our independence and to be able to provide opinions to you. While the governor may remove the board members for incompetency, it's very specific statute-wise what he can remove them for. There's a petition process that may be pursued by the state examiner through the legislative council. So you can't just on a whim say, I don't like the way that you're doing things and get rid of them. That is not the way it can work at all. And then further, once he's gone through the legislative council, if he wants to go further than that, he can even go to a court and a court hearing in Marion County, the Supreme Court in the Marion County. So it's not so easy to get rid of any of the board members. The other thing that you'll see is that we're grouped in specialties. This part has where we really changed. Before we were split by function, and we were split by districts. And we would have field supervisors. And for those of you who have been around for a while, you got very comfortable with your field examiners, and you got comfortable with your field supervisor. We're no longer arranged that way. We have two main auditing type groups. One is what we call the audit group. It's the larger one, and it's charged with performing audits, which we have defined as being federal audits or A133 audits. All counties, with the exception of about 5 of you, get this type of audit performed. And the deciding factor on whether or not that you receive this is whether your expenditures for federal funds have been greater than $500,000 in a given year. So most of you do spend more in federal monies than $500,000. You'll see audit coordinators, and they do just what it says. They're not the old field supervisors. They are the ones who coordinate which audits are done. Again, it's not just counties, it's cities, towns, schools, the whole kit and caboodle. They've got to arrange our staff and where they're going to go, how they're going to go, all of those things. And they also take care of the administrative function. So they are not readily available for questions, unlike the old field supervisors who were. And there's 5 of them, and they're not on site. You won't be seeing them. Next are audit managers. These are the folks you will see. There's 17 of those. They're in charge of several audits at one time and go on site to visit. They review the work that's being done, and they'll not be on your site all the time. But if you wanted to ask them some questions, and I will talk a little bit more about this, they're available. But the one thing to remember is that Lori and I are your liaison, and so if most questions that you have, especially if it gets into complicated issues, please direct them to us, because they want to help you, whoever's on site, and they will to the best of their ability. But don't think that they're putting you off if they say, we're going to have to contact the office, because they've been directed that when it comes to those complicated research type questions, that those come up to the office so that they can concentrate on what they're doing. For the field examiners, there are about 120 of those. So the difference, the 164 I mentioned before, well, that's cut back even further when it comes to the audit side of things. They're on site. They're the ones that are on site. They're the ones that you'll see. They're the ones you'll really interact with. They perform the actual audit work. They should be keeping you informed of progress. Feel free, again, to ask them those questions. Just keep in mind that they might be contacting us too. The next group over that you see is called the Special Investigation Exam Group. And their name pretty well says it all. First of all, for those who don't receive an audit, you will have an exam. And conceptually, they're pretty much the same thing. So for those 5 counties, it's conceptually, it is the same thing. There's an opinion rendered. The financial statements are looked at. It's just that there's not an in-depth audit of the federal programs. This group, though, is very, very small. We have been told, though, that from a county perspective, everybody's going to have an audit or an exam this year. But there are going to be certain cities and towns, I don't know about schools, but definitely there's going to be other units of government that we do not get to this year. And this side that is charged with doing the exams, remember it says special investigation. Unfortunately, they spend all their time doing special investigations. There are 5 coordinators and there are 15 field examiners that do this work. That's not very many. The coordinators actually, you will see out in the field when you come to our conferences, you'll actually get the chance to meet them and some of the field staff, because we have what we call a resource center where you can ask questions during the conference. They're there to work with you on a one-on-one basis. And it has proven, I think it's been a really good thing. Deb, have people enjoyed that this year? Yeah, we just started that this past year and everything. So when you are coming to the Recorders Conference or the Clerks Conference, if you've been having some special difficulties, maybe with your reconciling, you don't quite understand something, and you really want to talk eye to eye with somebody, please, you can bring your questions and they'll be there to help you with that. The next one you'll see is Director of Audit Services. Like I said earlier, that's Lori and I. We used to be called county supervisors. We also had supervisors for cities and towns, for schools, special districts. We were broken up by function. And what we're doing now is, while we have specializations, Lori and I specialize with counties, we're also taking emails and phone calls when it comes to schools and cities and towns. We have other members of our group where it used to be, you know, we're like, I know nothing about a city and town. You'll have to talk to Charlie Pride. And for those of you who've been around a long, long time, Charlie Pride is a well-known name. But the fact of the matter is that our area too is small and new and growing. And so what we've done is we're considering ourselves a unit. And so while always feel free to ask for Lori or myself if we're not available, or if we're particularly overwhelmed, you might be getting one of the other specialists who will try to help you with your questions. And I'll tell you, everybody's very careful. We talk, all of us, we have weekly meetings and we talk very carefully about any positions that we're giving. So it's not like that you call one of us and we'll give you one thing and then somebody else will call, say, like one of the city town specialists, and they'll give you another answer. That does not happen. Our offices are right around each other, so we talk very, very frequently. We, in addition to training, we are the ones who provide the manuals and do the conferences, as I was mentioning, and also the bulletins, and we are your liaison. And everybody that is in this group enjoys working with you. I can say that. Lori was very, very excited when she heard, because she was like, the auditing side, there is a little bit of a distance. Not much, but it's just there, whereas we are the ones who get to be friendly and ask you questions that let you know that we don't know it all. The other box I put on here is it's kind of a new thing. You'll see quality control and IT, but that's really, for us, functionality inside. But there's also a data analysis group, and that is brand new for us. What that is we are trending towards doing risk-based approach for some of our testing. And this group is charged with getting information and analyzing that information so that we have better coverage on those areas that are high risk. The counties had this experience with 911 funding earlier this year, and it really did kind of work out well. They requested certain information to be sent into the office, and then when they had questions, they more than likely would call and talk for additional documentation. So don't be surprised if you hear from someone called Eugene. He's a very nice guy, or a Charlie. Both of those are our data analysis people. And for things, especially like maybe a reconcilement of your bank accounts or something, they might be asking for information so that they can do that analysis. I would have to say that for your group, probably not, because you are a big, big collection point when it comes to fees. So generally, you're going to get the full-blown audit when we come out there. So, but it could be that there's a special project that they're working on, and I did want to make you aware that, yes, they are legitimate. It's a legitimate part of what we're doing now. Also, as you need to understand that we give audit positions. We do not give legal advice. I think that's a crime. And it would be a crime if I gave it, for sure. We are not attorney. Well, actually, some of our directors are attorneys, so I can't really say that, but they don't act in the capacity as an attorney, even though we and you will become quite familiar with Indiana code. And as a matter of fact, some of the attorneys do contact us because they're not as familiar with where to look up things in the codes. We're still not giving legal advice. What we give you are our audit positions, what we will take exception to, what we won't take exception to, and those things that we expect to see when we come on an audit site. For legal advice, you need to contact your county attorney. We do have legal counsel that we work with in our office, but again, that's just to give us audit positions, and that's all. You know, you are managing your offices, and there are certain things like personnel issues where we can tell you what records and forms that you should be keeping, but if it comes to the hiring and firing of somebody, you would need to be following your county's policy. And then if there are further questions, you should ask for guidance from your county attorney. So that's the distinction that I want you to kind of understand there. Contacting us, mail. Not very many people do snail mail, but if you want to, you can always write us. And there's our fax number. There are times where we need to fax some information, so I need you to have that. Sometimes, and this is so rare anymore with email, people want our positions in a letter form on our letterhead, which we can still even do that by email. But if that is the case where you do want that degree of formality, you can send something to us in writing, and we'll send something back to you in writing. But since the advent of email, it just, I mean, I know that when I send a position to one of you, then it's throughout the whole state by the end of the day. So because I will get calls then from other officials, well, what do you mean? I thought you said this at the conference. I'm like, oh, I forgot. Maybe I did. Here's our telephone numbers. And already there is one change for Paul. His person, her name is Juanita Hendrickson. Okay, just so that you don't go, who's Juanita? And she's a very nice lady. She just hired on this past week. For us, I know that her name looks like a funny spelled Diane, but her name is Dana. So Dana is the one who will be answering the phones most of the time for Lori and myself. Very nice. She's actually very, very knowledgeable about things and can a lot of times help you, like, you know, where do I find something on the website, that type of thing. She will help you with that. We do not have voicemail. Well, that's not quite true. If you call way after hours, we do have one general voicemail that's for the whole agency. And please don't, I mean, you can use it, but it just takes forever for that to ever get to any of us. But we don't have individual voicemail. The board feels that you should always be talking to a live person. So that's what you're going to get, is a live person every time that you call in. Email, this is the preferred method. For those of you who've been dealing with us for a while, you know it's the preferred method because you can put down in writing exactly what you want. We will respond exactly to that question. Things can kind of sometimes get garbled when you're doing things verbally. Not that there aren't situations where we actually need to discuss it, and that's all fine and good too, but often you're trying to get some information so that you can show your commissioners or your council or somebody like that too, and you want it in writing because you'll go back to them and say, well, I talked to State Board of Accounts, and they're like, well, I want to see it. So this is one of those ways that you can do that. Again, you'll talk with Lori and I the most of the times, or email us. However, if there are personnel issues with the field examiners, the board wants to hear about it. Unfortunately, it does occur. We nip that in the bud as quickly as possible, but if we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it. And so please, if you do have some issue, and I'm not talking about, well, they're coming on audit and I don't have time for them. I mean, we never have time for audits, but I'm talking about some very serious infractions, then please do contact the board. And having said that, that's one thing. I mean, if you've got a new system that's coming in place and now all of a sudden you've got a field examiner that's showing up on your door, we'll work with you. I mean, we understand that there's sometimes that you're in transition phases that it's not even beneficial to do an audit yet. So don't be afraid to speak up about that. Auditor of State, you'll work with them as far as sending fees into them. Not so much otherwise. Your auditor and your treasurer work mostly with them. Department of Local Government Finance, better known as DLGF. They are the budget people. Again, it's your auditor and counsel who work with them the most, but you do have to produce a budget. And so if you've got questions about budgeting, you can contact the DLGF. Treasurer of State, this has to do with investments. I know that you don't do a lot from an investing standpoint. Clerks actually do a little bit more because they've got a lot of money in trust, and so you have to do certain things with that. But the one thing that you should be aware of is that when it comes to bank accounts, because you both, recorders have their own bank account and clerks have their own bank account, is that it has to be a designated depository. You can't just go to whatever bank is giving you the best deal or what you feel the most comfortable with. It has to be designated by the state and by your local commission. That would be the commissioners and the treasurers. So if you're wondering who your designated depositories are, then contact your treasurer. They will be able to tell you, give you a list of depositories that you can use. Secretary of State's office, clerks again, election division, wow, really important. You'll be hearing from them and talking with them. You'll be working a lot with them. Believe it or not, for the recorder's side, there are things like notaries and UCC filings. Jerry is going to be coming and talking with you a little bit about that today. So both of you do work with the Secretary of State's office. Supreme Court, again, this is the clerk's side. This gets into case types, programs, even different various fees and everything. So, and again, JTAC would be for the clerks, as would DCS. DCS really works with the clerks and with the county auditors. Public Access Counselor. I think you had a presentation yesterday about public access, didn't you? Was Luke the one who gave the presentation, or was, okay. Well, Luke Britt is the Public Access Counselor, the person that you can call to get, or write to get advisories. Again, I know that you heard it yesterday. It's very, very important. I will have to say that we do invite him to come to our meetings, and we give him an hour, and I feel like I could give him the morning, because there's always a lot of complicated questions when it comes to public access of records and what you have to retain, how long you have to retain it, who can have access when, whether it's email, and gives me a headache. So, but anyway, and Commission on Public Records. Keeping public records, that's what they are. They are public records, and so that is a very important function of both of your offices. Comes to recorders, I mean, you know, people look to you to have the mortgages, our deeds, everything. I mean, that's a lifeblood for a lot of people. Clerks, same way. You have court cases reaching back forever, child support information. All of these are important records. They're public records. But your financial records are public records too. There are some caveats, but they also need to be maintained. There's a retention schedule, and you'll have a local retention schedule. IC 5-15-6-1 provides for the County Commission of Public Records. There was a change this past year. Before, the clerk was always the secretary. Now, it can be the clerk or the recorder by mutual agreement. So I'm sure you'll be fighting over that job. But legislation realized that you probably won't be fighting over this job. And if that's the case, then it's by majority vote of the County Commission of Public Records as to who the lucky winner is on that. So be aware that either one of you might be able to put on that hat. But it is a very important job. I know that some counties say, well, we haven't met for over a year, and I'm like, things come up. We'll get phone calls. How long do I have to keep this? I'm like, well, what does your record retention schedule say? Well, it isn't really up to date. So it is an important function. I just know that you've got so many things that you have to do that a lot of times that kind of goes by the wayside. Again, the secretary, I said, for the election division, but we also kind of categorize them a little bit differently, even though they're within the same statutory office. We have the Secretary of State's. And your affiliation, very, very, very important. This is the special group that you really need to get to know. They'll be talking with the recorders all afternoon, and I'm sure that Deb will be talking a little bit this afternoon. Will you be just saying, do you want to come up and say hi to everybody so that they can see who you are? You have been, and so I wasn't sure if you were going to help out with that side of it or not today, or is it just going to be Terry and Nancy? Are they okay? I'm seeing her sit there, and I'm like, I know that she's been the past in your association and everything, and she's done a remarkable job, as your associations always do. But sometimes the past association members will kind of come and say a few words about what they've gone through and everything. So I wasn't sure if you wanted to do that, but that's fine. You know, that's no, that's yes, yes. Okay, good. So, but again, your association, they are there for you for everything. When it comes to new legislation, and if you think something is just wrong when it comes to your statute or something like that, they have ledge committees, the AIC, they are your partner in getting things done. So I just can't stress enough. I think a lot of the associations try to give you contact people of people who are there to partner, mentor you, that are the like a clerk for a clerk, a recorder for a recorder. So please make sure. For clerks, I know Florinda. I'm pretty sure Florinda and Terry will be coming. Joe. For the recorder side, I know he's going to be speaking a lot, so. Okay, pull out your other handout. Let's try to go through this. This is understanding the audit process. You can read through this. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of what to expect when you have the auditors come on site. There is, as I mentioned earlier, we do several engagements, and that's on the third page, I believe. They talk about the financial audits, examinations, and federal A-133. But substantively, what we do is pretty much the same. There will be an entrance conference when we come on site, but that's going to be with the county auditor. And it's somewhat informal in a way. We're coming to find out where we can sit and where we can work from. But we do encourage, and hopefully most auditors do this. They should be sending an email to let you know that we are on site. It's not supposed to be a surprise. The audit itself is supposed to be maybe not where we let you know we're coming, but once we're there, it shouldn't be a surprise to any of the officials. And so we do encourage them to send an email to everyone so that they know that we're there. As I said, you're both big collection points. So we do risk-based auditing, and cash is always a high risk. You also have outside bank accounts. Again, another high-risk area. So you tend to get picked on quite a bit. And I think you expect that, and that's okay. You can shoulder that. But then we get to the finding side of things, and that is an unfortunate part of our job, that if we find some non-compliance, then we will be writing a finding if it's material enough. Not everything that's non-compliance is material enough to go into a public report. But if it is, then you will have a report, and you will have an exit conference that will be to you specifically if you have that finding on your office. I will have to say it should not be a surprise. The auditor should be working with you, telling you, talking to you about this. If it is a surprise, then something's gone kind of wrong, unless that there is, you as an official are having, you've done something very, very wrong and stolen a lot of money, then you might not know what's going on. But generally, Let's hope that that never happens for any of you, and I don't see that in this room. So I know it's not going to. But the auditors are there to audit, but they're also there to understand your processes. And so if you are with them and they're asking you questions and you, one, don't get what their question is, sometimes you have different names for forms or records or something, make sure that you have an understanding of what it is that they're asking, even if you have to get to elementary type of language, like, you know, that fee thing that we have a bank statement for. I'm serious. I want you to have an understanding of what it is that they need, and they need to have an understanding of what it is that you have available. That's the way that you don't have any surprises. If you do get to the exit conference and you're like, well, wait a minute, I do have records that cover that noncompliance that you're talking about. Speak up, let them know then. This is not, that finding at that point is not set in stone. That is part of the process. That's the stop that we take where we say, here's in writing what the finding is. What, are you sure that you don't have anything? Let us know now, okay? And if you don't understand the finding, because that can happen, if you don't understand it, don't let them leave that room until you understand it. There should be, we're not rocket scientists up here. And so what we're writing you up on should not be so complicated that you don't get it, okay? That just means that we need more communication and better communication. So please. The other thing is, too, that you have the opportunity to respond. And I think, personally, that that's a great thing. I know a lot of times officials don't respond unless it's a federal audit and it's for a federal program. Then they're required to have a corrective action. I think, though, that that is your opportunity to, I mean, if you disagree, you can obviously put that in there. But if you have a corrective action, that shows the public, one, okay, so you aren't perfect, none of us are, but you're going to take positive action. You've already thought this through of what you're going to do to correct this problem, and you're making it public. Perfect forum for that. So if by chance you do have a finding, please take that opportunity to do that. So you don't have to. That's just something that I think is available to you. A lot of times what we have too are non-compliance, but they're comments. We're just going to talk to you about it and everything. Take those to heart, because a lot of times those things can get out of hand. We're not mentioning it to you if we don't think that it's important. And so if you hear the field examiner saying, well, your controls are a little weak over here, I think you should have something compensating for it, get into a conversation with them and say, well, what would you suggest? Or what, and they can't tell you how to do things because we're independent, but we can at least kind of say, well, with your system, you know, maybe you need 2 people over here, or, you know, 3, it's up to you, but these are the things that you should consider so that you have stronger, more effective internal controls. See, we've kind of talked about the audit reports. We're going back to the PowerPoint. Oh, sure. Well, there's 2 kinds of reports. There's the county annual report, and for that, the county auditor is the one who would go to that and there will also be the president of the council and the commissioners, hopefully, will go to that also. And that's where usually that the federal findings are discussed as well. When it comes to just the compliance portion with a specific office, then it'll be that office holder. So if the clerk has non-compliance that will be in a report, then the exit conference will be with that clerk. Okay? And I do allude in the PowerPoint that there are two reports, just as I was saying. There's the annual financial report where we have the opinions, we have federal findings, but we also have a supplemental report, which is for the non-compliance that we find in a specific office. If you have a finding, that's when it will be in that report. We don't give positive reports, so you might go, well, they were in here, but nothing's happened. Hopefully that field examiner will always tell you that we're leaving now. We didn't find any exceptions. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but if you don't have an exit conference, that means you're not going to have a report that it is specific to your office. The report is now all combined. It will have all of the findings for all of the offices at one time when it's made public. We used to have them by the individual offices, but now they are combined. But they're identified by the specific office. This is really for the public so that they have one place to go, so that they can find what comments have been made at a particular county. This is really important. This is relatively new. There's required reporting to State Board of Accounts, and it's found under IC 5-11-1-27. And this is where all erroneous or irregular variances, losses, shortages, or thefts of local property shall be reported immediately to the State Board of Accounts. Actually, most of the time people have been very, very responsible in doing that without there being a statute. But this statute came about because there were times when that did not occur. We need to know if there are issues. And I will tell you, unfortunately, like I think it was a county sheriff, he was doing everything right. He found that there was a shortage in his office. He was trying to find out what was going on. Obviously he had reported it to himself. No, I'm kidding. But you are supposed to, if there's a shortage or whatever, you would report it to your law enforcement, a theft or something. But not a shortage, excuse me, but for a theft or something like that. But he was really looking into it. Unfortunately, the news got a hold of it before he could contact us. And it was like within a couple of days he had planned on talking with us after he had uncovered a little bit more and everything. But somehow the news had found out, and so they contacted us, and we're like, we don't have a clue what you're talking about, unfortunately. And that made the press. I mean, because that is one of the compliance things, is that you have to report to us. So I don't mean for you to go, oh, as soon as I find it, I have to pick up the phone. But, you know, it would be good for you to look into it a little bit. But don't let much time go by. And I've also been asked if it's $1, do I have to do that? Well, there is no minimum amount that's in the statute. So, yes, technically you do. Please, if it is a very, very small amount, you know, like $1 got dropped or something like that, let us know what controls you kind of have in place or what you plan on doing to change, because that will let us know what we need to do. For the larger issues, we might come on site immediately. It'll be up to the board who makes that decision. But that way, the more information that you can provide, and for counties, you can provide that to Lori and myself, the more information that you provide, then the better that we can assess what we really need to do. Oh, is there anything that I need to do between now and when I take office? Absolutely. Training is a start. You can look at your manuals. Again, like I said, I wish I'd written down the exact chapter in the clerk and the recorder's manuals, but really, boy, it's just not coming to me. But you want to, I don't want you to take it home at night unless you really need to get a good night's sleep, but you do need to maybe glance through it and see those areas that pique your interest, that you think would be helpful to you. So please look at those. Look at prior findings. You can go to our website. All the audit reports are there. Do look and see what findings have been against your office that you're taking possession of, not just for this past year, but maybe for the past couple of years. That might indicate to you what some issues are that you need to start addressing, because even if it wasn't your fault, you've taken on that responsibility to correct the issue. So make sure you do that. Talk and communicate with your current official. Discuss transition. There are things, like where are the records? What vendor do you use? What kind of reporting system? Ask if they won't let you come into the office up front and just kind of do walkthroughs and everything with you. That would be very, very beneficial, and hopefully you have that kind of relationship that you can do that. So I highly encourage that. Stamps. You need to get for your signature stamp, you need to get that done. So you need to contact about that. Look at your budget. Find out about what monies you're going to have available to do the things that you want to do, that you need to be doing. That's always good to know. Find about how your county does the oath of office. They do it all sorts of different ways. It can be ceremonial, just through a judge, or they just tell you that you're on your own. So find out what you need to do there. Find out about your bonds. You're going to have to be bonded to be able to take office. And sometimes it's a little bit more complicated than what you think it's going to be. So if you haven't done so, find out what bonding company the county uses so that you can get in touch and that you can get that done. Then the council, it's fixed by the council. For the clerks, it's going to be $30,000 for each million in receipts, so that you kind of have a clue on that side. So it's a little stiffer to get a bond for clerk's side of things. For clerks, for recorders, it's $15,000. And it has to be for a 4-year term. It can't, they have what they, and then of course you're newly elected, so that's not going to be an issue, but it does need to be a 4-year term. And if you are fortunate enough to be reelected, then it can't just continue on. You would have to have a cutoff and have a new bond in place. Yes. Yes, I have, and this is something that you have to make sure of, is that you are covered individually per statute. The statute have, okay. The statute is IC 5-4-1-18. The wording on these insurance bonds can be kind of tricky. And so it doesn't have to be your name on it, but it does have to have your office and that you are covered individually on that, okay? As a matter of fact, from the AG, we talked with them about it a little bit, and the preference is if you do one of those blankety kind of bonds, that your name isn't there, that it's by office. And the reason for that is if there's somebody leaves office in the middle of the bond or something like that, it can become very tricky to get the money if it's needed or something like that. So, but yes, you can do that, but be very careful. So, and have your bond company, they should be familiar with that statute and know what's needed to be done. So make sure that it is done properly. Mm-hmm. Conflict of interest, that's always an interesting question. It is a legal question, by the way, and so you would want to consult your county attorney. But there's also what we have, conflict of interest forms, that those have to be filled out. You see, you're going to get a little lesson here. Those forms, if you feel, and we're always going to say fill it out, if you think that there's a conflict of interest, then you need to fill out that form that is recorded, sent to us. Is it to the clerks too that get a copy of it? Yes, yes, okay. All the new clerks, you'll be getting those too, but so you would fill that out as well as consult with your county attorney on that, okay? So. Make sure that you know what your bank accounts are. Seems elemental, but you know, it's very important. You want to make sure that the signatories are going to you and that the other person's getting removed. Again, both groups have your own individual bank accounts, so this is very, very important to do. Same for investments. Recorders probably won't have any clerks, could have some CDs and that type of thing. So you want to make sure that any access to the investments is coming over to you. You should be making arrangements with the current official to be there the last business day to count cash and do inventory of those investments that we were talking about and inventory your assets. And so that you can have a list, you both should have a list of what assets and investments that there are. And also, I think it would be a really good idea to just ask them, okay, first day I get here, what can I expect? There might be certain things that they have left hanging. There might be some claims that need to be processed, those types of things. So most officials do try to clean up their office as well as they can before they leave, but there'll be those things that they can't do, so just talk with them about that. This is always a good one because these are the things that sometimes you just don't think about doing. Getting keys to the office, kind of important. So make arrangements for that. If there's a combination to the lock, you know, make sure that you have that information. Computer access. Make sure that their access is going to disappear at midnight and yours is going to appear. So you need to work with your IT. If you don't have an IT department, you just need to make sure that arrangements are made with your vendors, etc. for that. You can start thinking right now what you're going to do in office and you know what your staff is going to do. Again, that's why it's so nice to be able to get in there and see what duties everybody has currently, and then that way you can go, okay, I need to and get an understanding of what their duties are, and then that way you can start melding your ideas, because I'm sure you wouldn't have taken this job on if you didn't have some new, fresh ideas. So you can start thinking, well, this is where I might want to start transitioning some changes, that type of thing. Make sure that you have the email When you get your new email address, please contact us and give us that email, because as I said before, that is the main way that we communicate with you, so we do need that information. So please, first thing. Otherwise, I don't want you to miss out when we're sending. Sometimes we send out positions to, like, the clerks or to the recorders on an individual mass mailing basis. And so if we don't have your email address, you're not going to get that. And we just need one email per office, if at all possible. Sometimes I know, like, if there's illness or something, that maybe the person that you have designated as the email recipient might not be available for a long period of time. Let us know that, so then again we can keep those communication lines open. I don't think there is. I think there's just for your mailing address. You know, if you want to put it to the side, that's fine, but when you actually get into your office in your position, that might change. So because I know several of you are already there, but I don't know, like for us, if I go to another department, then it'll have designated another department or something. So, but you can put it there. That'd be okay. You can find our manuals on our website and our quarterly publications, so please avail yourselves of those. Indiana Code, I really wanted to spend some time on this, and I don't think we're going to have time to do that. But the General Assembly, which is where you find the Indiana Code, and this is the website, has recently changed how you access the Indiana Code, and it appears a little bit on the complicated side. If you have Explorer 10 that you're using, it seems that it's not fully compatible. They're designated as Chrome and is it Firefox? Yeah, they use that a lot. If you are looking at the Indiana Code and you're having trouble, like you want to print out something, feel free to contact one of us, because we've gone through the agony and we can kind of help you, walk you through it, because it isn't just a simple click up here on a toolbar print. You have to actually do a download in order to get to it, that it's a printable form. So, you know, if you're having trouble, this is so important. Call, please. Your educational opportunities, your association each has an education committee. Again, avail yourself to education. It is so important, please. You'll be dealing with other county offices. Sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes it's wonderful relationships. Whatever you do, just remember you're professionals. You will always behave in that professional manner, and you'll try to develop those relationships irregardless of what other folks are doing. And you just always have to keep in mind that the citizens are number one. That's why we're here. And that's why I love working with all of you so much, because you all do take that to heart. And so I so appreciate that. But with those people, there are going to be angry people too. I'm just going to tell you that up front. We get them about you. Because if they don't like what you've said, I get a phone call. Well, such and such clerk has told me that, and I don't think that's right. And I'll feel like, well, the code says that's why they're doing it under what authority and duties that they can do. And so we've got your back when it comes to those kinds of phone calls. We understand that a lot of times the citizens just don't understand. But that is part of your job, to help them understand, to always say to them, I don't come up with this. It is based on some kind of authority. That's why I charge you this fee. That might not be so easy when it comes to inmates and things like that. They probably don't care. But on the whole, these people will understand if you can point them to the Indiana code. Then they're like, oh, okay, I guess there really isn't much you can do about it. So, and it is just different from private industry, because they will say to you over and over and over again, I pay your salary. And they do. That's the thing, is they do. That doesn't mean that they should be disrespectful. But we're here as public servants because it's a special calling. I think that it is a very, very special calling. And I'm proud to be a public servant. I love having that name. And I think that you all do too. So just keep that in mind when one of your bosses gets a little out of hand. Try to just stay pleasant, keep your dignity, and it'll be good, because for each one of those people, even though they might not say it, there's hundreds that appreciate what you do. Just keep that in mind. Again, I don't want to eat into your break, so I appreciate you listening for this morning. We're going to break out now into 2 different sessions. For the clerks, they're going to go back through these doors into the Heathrow room. For the recorders, we're going to be over in the synopsis room. And again, if you've got questions or whatever, we're here for you, okay?